Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Practice English with Podcast. I'm your host, Adam, and I'm so happy you're here with me today. How are you all doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day, wherever you are in the world right now. Before we start today's episode, I want to say thank you. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with me learning English. I know learning a new language isn't always easy. Sometimes it feels difficult. Sometimes you might feel frustrated. But you're here, and that's what matters most. Today, we're going to talk about something really special, something I think many of you need to hear. Our topic is why you're better at English than you think you are. Yes, you heard that right. I believe that right now, at this very moment, your English is better than you think it is. And today, I'm going to explain why. I'm going to share some ideas that might change how you see your own progress. So let's get started. Let me start with a question. When you think about your English level, how do you feel? Do you feel confident? Do you feel proud of yourself? Or do you focus on your mistakes? Do you think about all the things you still can't do? If you're like most English learners I've worked with over the past 10 years, you probably focus on the negative things. You probably think about your mistakes more than your successes. And I understand this. It's completely normal. But here's the thing. It's not helpful. And more importantly, it's not accurate. You see, when we judge our own language skills, we're usually too hard on ourselves. We compare ourselves to native speakers, and of course, we feel like we're not good enough. But that's not a fair comparison. Native speakers have been speaking English their entire lives. You've been learning English for maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years. That's different. Very different. Let me give you an example from my own life. I studied French for several years. I can read French fairly well. I can understand conversations. I can express my basic needs when I travel to France. But when I speak French, I make mistakes. I forget words. Sometimes I use the wrong grammar. And you know what? For a long time, I thought my French was terrible. I felt embarrassed about it. But then one day, a French friend said something to me that changed my perspective completely. She said, "Adam, you speak French, not perfectly, but you communicate. You express your ideas. You make yourself understood. That's amazing." And she was right. I was so focused on what I couldn't do that I forgot to appreciate what I could do. This is exactly what happens to English learners. You're so focused on your mistakes, on the words you don't know, on the grammar rules you find confusing, that you forget something very important. You forget that you're communicating in a language that isn't your native language. And that, my friends, is incredible. Now, let's talk about something specific. Let's talk about understanding. Right now, you're listening to me speak English, and you're understanding most of what I'm saying, right? Maybe not every single word, but you're getting the main ideas. You're following along with the conversation. Think about that for a moment. Really think about it. You're processing sounds, turning them into words, understanding grammar structures, and making meaning from all of this, and you're doing it in real time. Your brain is doing something absolutely amazing right now. Do you remember when you first started learning English? Do you remember how difficult it was to understand even simple sentences? Maybe you had to listen to something 3 times, 4 times, 5 times just to understand the basic meaning. But now you can listen to a podcast like this one and you understand. That's huge progress. I want you to try something. Think about an English movie or TV show you watched recently. Could you follow the story? Did you understand what was happening? Even if you didn't catch every single word, even if you needed subtitles sometimes, you were still engaging with English content made for native speakers. That shows you have a strong level of comprehension. Here's another thing many students don't realize. When you're listening to English, you're not just hearing words, you're also picking up on context clues, on tone of voice, on facial expressions if you're watching video. You're using all of these elements together to create understanding. This is exactly what native speakers do. You're using the same strategies they use. You're thinking in English even if you don't realize it. And reading? If you can read English articles, if you can read stories, if you can read social media posts in English and understand them, that's a major skill. Reading is actually one of the most complex cognitive activities humans do, and you're doing it in your second, third, or maybe fourth language. That deserves recognition. Let's talk about mistakes. This is a big one. So many students tell me, Adam, I make too many mistakes. My English is bad because I always make mistakes. And every time I hear this, I want to stop everything and say, making mistakes doesn't mean your English is bad. It means you're learning. It means you're trying. It means you're brave enough to use the language. I need you to understand something very clearly. Native speakers make mistakes too. Yes, native speakers. I make mistakes when I speak. Sometimes I start a sentence one way and finish it another way. Sometimes I forget a word and have to pause and think. Sometimes I use the wrong word completely. And I've been speaking English my entire life. The difference is that native speakers don't worry about these mistakes. They just keep talking. They correct themselves if necessary, and they move on. But English learners, they make one small mistake and they panic. They think, oh no, my English is terrible. They stop talking. They lose confidence. And that's the real problem, not the mistake itself, but the reaction to the mistake. Here's what I want you to remember. When you make a grammar mistake, but the other person understands you, your communication was successful. When you can't remember the perfect word, but you describe what you mean in a different way, your communication was successful. Communication isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about sharing ideas and understanding each other. Let me share a story with you. I once had a student from Japan named Yuki. She was so worried about making mistakes that she barely spoke in class. She would prepare every sentence in her head before saying it out loud. One day, we were talking about food, and she wanted to say delicious, but she couldn't remember the word. She got frustrated and said, I'm sorry, I forget the word. It's like very, very good taste makes me happy. And you know what? Everyone understood her perfectly. In fact, her description was beautiful and clear. After class, I told her, Yuki, what you did today was perfect English communication. She looked surprised. She said, but I made a mistake. I forgot the word delicious. And I said, yes, but you found another way to express your idea. That's what good communicators do. Native speakers do this all the time. That conversation changed something for Yuki. She started to worry less about perfection and focus more on expressing herself. And guess what? Her English improved much faster after that. I want to remind you of something you might have forgotten. Learning English is really, really difficult. The grammar has so many exceptions. The pronunciation doesn't always match the spelling. The vocabulary is enormous. There are phrasal verbs, idioms, different accents, cultural references, and so much more to learn. But despite all of this difficulty, you're still here. You're still learning. You haven't given up. And more than that, you've already learned so much. Think about where you started and where you are now. Think about the progress you've made. When you first started learning English, the alphabet might have been strange to you. The sounds might have been difficult to pronounce. Simple sentences like, "How are you?" might have required effort to understand. But now these things are easy for you. They're automatic. You don't even think about them anymore. This is something very important to understand about language learning. When we learn something new, it feels difficult. We're very aware of the effort we're making. But once we master it, it becomes invisible to us. We forget we ever found it difficult.
This is why it's so important to look back sometimes and see how far you've come. I encourage all my students to do this exercise. Find something you wrote in English from 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or when you first started learning English. Read it now. I promise you, you'll be surprised. You'll see how much you've improved. You'll notice mistakes in that old writing that you would never make now. You'll see how your vocabulary has grown, how your sentences have become more complex and natural. And here's another thing. You're learning English while living your regular life. You have a job, or you're a student, or you have family responsibilities. You have other things to do. But somehow, you're still finding time to learn English. You're listening to podcasts, maybe watching videos, reading articles, practicing speaking. You're making English a part of your life. That takes dedication, that takes discipline, and that deserves respect.
Now, I want to talk about something that might seem small, but it's actually very big. I want to talk about the small victories in your English learning journey. These are the moments that show your progress, but they're easy to overlook because they seem minor. For example, have you ever been watching a movie in English and suddenly realized you forgot to read the subtitles? Maybe you were so engaged in the story that you were just listening and understanding naturally. That's a victory. That's proof your listening skills have improved dramatically. Or have you ever been reading an English article and you encountered a word you didn't know, but you understood its meaning from context? You didn't need to stop and use a dictionary. You just figured it out naturally. That's a victory. That's proof your reading comprehension has reached a sophisticated level. What about those moments when you think of something in English first, before your native language? Maybe you're trying to remember a word and the English version comes to your mind before your native language version. This happens to many language learners, and it's a beautiful sign that English is becoming a natural part of your thinking process. Or those times when you're speaking English and the words just flow. You're not translating from your native language. You're not stopping to think about grammar rules. You're just speaking naturally and comfortably. Even if it's just for a few sentences, even if it's just for a moment, that's real fluency. And it shows that you're capable of much more than you give yourself credit for. I remember one student told me about ordering food in English at a restaurant while traveling. She said it was just a simple interaction, ordering, answering questions about how she wanted her food prepared, thanking the server. But she was so proud because she did it all naturally, without nervousness, without planning every word in advance. That's the kind of small victory I'm talking about. These moments matter. They show your real ability. So, my dear listeners, we've covered a lot today. We've talked about why you're better at English than you think. We've discussed how you're too hard on yourself, how your comprehension skills are stronger than you realize, how mistakes don't define your level, how you've already overcome enormous challenges, and how small victories reveal your true abilities. I want to leave you with one final thought. Language learning is not a destination. It's a journey. There's no finish line where you suddenly become perfect at English. Even native speakers are still learning new words, new expressions, new ways to communicate throughout their entire lives. So stop waiting to be perfect before you feel proud of yourself. Stop comparing yourself to native speakers or to other learners who might seem more advanced. Your journey is your own. Your progress is your own. And it's real, even if you can't always see it. The next time you catch yourself thinking, my English is not good enough, I want you to stop and ask yourself, compared to what? Compared to when? If you compare yourself to where you were 6 months ago,
1 year ago or when you first started learning, I think you'll find that your English has improved much more than you realized. You're doing great. You really are. Keep going. Keep learning. Keep practicing. And most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Remember, every time you listen to this podcast, you're improving your English. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, take care and keep practicing.